Hello everyone, I'm Casper. Welcome to Testeroni, where we help you become test automation engineers one slice at a time. And today we are going to talk about a little fallacy that I feel many people fall into. So when talking about becoming a test automation engineer, very often people seem preoccupied with the notion of always needing to learn more. They always feel that there is just one more thing on the horizon. There's always something else to learn. There's always this moving goalpost of some new knowledge that you need to acquire before you are ready to, by your own standards, to apply for a job. And I think that is not the case at all. While there is some utility in such a position when you are starting out, when you are a complete beginner, I feel that people encounter this moment of diminishing returns very early on, way earlier than they feel. And after that, it's just the matter of being afraid to take the leap. And I think that's both counterproductive and actually harmful to you, both with regards to you having this role and with regards to you just becoming a better test automation engineer. And so today, we're going to dissect this a bit and talk about why that is and what you should do in order to move forward. So first of all, we should establish one foundational point. You are not ready, and you will never be. That's the whole culprit here. You won't ever be ready. There won't be a point when you know enough, because there is no such thing as enough. When you are learning in a controlled environment, you always have this next shiny object to chase. You always have this next thing to learn. And of course, it may one day come in handy. It may actually be useful one day, but it may also never be useful. And so that's the whole problem. You ingrain into your mind the notion that there is still something to learn, but I feel that's actually harmful, because that's the nature of real life projects. There's always something else to learn. And still, even if you learn that, there will be something more, and you still won't be quote unquote ready, because you can't get ready for real life projects until you participate in them. Because while you can learn all the frameworks, all the methodologies, you can learn everything about the theory of testing, about software development lifecycle, about version control. You can learn everything you can find, but still what you can't learn on your own is working with outdated or non-existent documentation. You can't learn working with uncertainty. You can't learn moving deadlines and changing priorities and all this stuff, and there's a ton of it. I would argue it makes like 50% of what you're going to be dealing with, maybe even more. I would say it actually encompasses more of your day-to-day work than actually learning the technicalities. To be honest, learning the technical stuff is the easy part, not the hard one, because it's actually, the bounds are known beforehand. It is actually constricted in some kind of a box, and the uncertainty stuff, it isn't. It's not something that you can learn about in a book. And even if you were to read some case studies or postmortems or something like that, it still wouldn't be the real deal. It still won't be something that you will feel on your own skin when you are inside a project, and a couple of projects, to be more precise. Because navigating through the imperfections of the real world scenarios and the problems that arise in imperfect real life situations is something that you can only learn in those situations. So you can't just learn your way into it. You will need to learn it like through the trial of fire after you are actually within the project. So you should get rid of the concept of knowing enough, because there will never be enough. The concept of enough does not apply to real life. It may be enough to start, to actually get the ball rolling, but there will never be a point of knowing enough to know it all. Secondly, you should be mindful of the concept known as the tutorial hell. The tutorial hell is a pattern of behavior, let's say, where people tend to get stuck in this never-ending loop of learning, like taking just one more course or watching just one more video or just doing one more hand-holding exercise online. So, and the whole problem lies in this hand-holding, because the whole overarching problem with the tutorial hell is that it is a safe space. It is too safe to simulate anything resembling the real life. And so that's the whole culprit here. You are postponing the moment of actually starting indefinitely very often because you want to be in that safe space where the bounds are known. And you should not strive for that, because the problems with the tutorials is that they are great at delivering like clear-cut, tailor-made solutions to your problems, or giving you or actually creating problems that then they are able to solve. And it's all great when you are a beginner. I'm not going on a rant that is against tutorials per se right now, because the tutorials, they do have a great utility, and you should use tutorials. You should watch videos. You should read on some stuff, but you shouldn't do that to the point of never being able to stop just because there is something you still don't know. You won't ever know everything. That's going back to the previous point that we were talking about. You'll never know everything, and you'll never know enough. So you should just focus on using those resources wisely, using them in order to be able to actually learn the stuff that will get you to some point of being able to progress further. And we're going to discuss where the point exactly lies later in the video, but you should keep that in mind. The temptation of the tutorial hell is that there is the safety net. Like I said, there is the safety net that you know you will never get rejected. You won't ever have a problem that cannot be solved, because there's always either the solution of or there's a community, or there's some mentor that's going to guide you through that, like worst case scenario. You won't ever get your ego hurt, because you won't get rejected by the employees. You won't feel any of those negative emotions. So it is a safe space, but this safety comes at a very hefty price of never actually doing stuff on your own, and thus never actually being able to grow past a certain point. I feel that in the case of the tutorials, this point of diminishing returns arrives way quicker than people seem to think, and the consequence of that is that people tend to really undermine how much faster, how much better they could actually move forward if they were able to put themselves in a position where they can fail. Because that's the thing with the tutorial hell. You can't fail there, but you can't succeed either. That's the price you are paying. And the first step you should take is to try and do something on your own. And when you have just brushed up on programming, when you have just started learning programming, you should already do some side project on your own. Just code up a simple application that works in the console, in the terminal. I'm not telling you to like try and clone Instagram afterwards, after doing a crash course in some technologies. I'm not telling you to try and like work on something for months, because that's just another way of you procrastinating. Don't get tempted in trying to make an application of your dreams just afterwards, just after learning the basics, because then you'll spend like months on having anything done and rewriting stuff constantly, and you are not moving any further anyway. You are just ingraining into your mind that you are not enough. And you are. You should just pick your side projects wisely. You should just pick something that you can actually do, even if it's a terminal calculator, even if it's just like, I don't know, a zodiac sign guesser that you can do in the terminal, even if that's like, I don't know, cloning some very simple thing, or just doing a simple input-output thing that can discuss, quote-unquote, with a user. Just do that. And similarly, after you learn the basics of a framework of your choice, don't just sit there and keep watching stuff, because I see people like getting into this hamster wheel again and again. They learn the basics of some framework, and then they go into more advanced stuff and more advanced stuff and more advanced stuff, and before you know it, They are learning how to manipulate some dynamic objects and, working with Ajax, jQuery, this, that. They are learning tons of stuff, files, databases, and they haven't ever touched anything themselves. They haven't ever created a framework like from the ground up. They haven't ever been entangled in any kind of a project. And they are already thinking about learning just one more thing. This leads nowhere. You will learn that. But first of all, most likely you won't retain that. Secondly, when the moment rises, when you are actually, when you can actually use that knowledge, most likely it'll already be outdated. So that's another problem. And thirdly, you are not focusing on what's right in front of you. So moving your career this one step forward, you are focusing on something that's 10,000 steps in front of you. And maybe you will get there if the path does not diverge earlier in your career. And most likely it will. So you are using your time, you are really not using it wisely if you are progressing like that. So go and code up something of your own. Like if you have just learned the basics of a framework, you have learned the basics of a locator, for example, you know how to build a locator. Just go and build some end-to-end tests on a website that you know, that you frequent, that you like. Hell, go to testeroni.org and try and build some end-to-end tests for it. Like try and think of them. Like you are staring at a website and you don't know anything about it, but you are to cover it with tests. What kind of tests would you do? What kind of testing would be like your top priority? What kind of test cases would you write? How would you then use your scripting knowledge and your framework knowledge in order to actually put all these thoughts into actual code to create a framework to actually run those tests? How would you go about that? And then try and do that. Try and create something that just scrolls the page and makes sure the section is there, or that clicks a link and it actually reaches the point that it should. Write some assertions and just see through your own eyes that your knowledge actually can create something, because that's how you build confidence in your knowledge, not by learning just one more thing, because then you will be just as uncertain in your knowledge. You'll just have more of it. And that's not, spreading yourself too thin is a great curse of people that are just starting out. And I really urge you to not go down that route. Get your hands dirty as soon as you can. Start building something, start seeing your skills, even if they are very basic, in motion, because then you'll stumble upon problems that aren't already predefined. You will need to Google for the solution. You will need to ask around. You will need to ask on Stack Overflow, or you will need to ask ChatGPT, whatever. But you will still need to learn to anticipate the problem and to combat the problem, and also to formalize the problem that you encounter into something that can be read by other people and responded to. And there's great utility in that. And after you learn all of that, then you should just start applying for jobs, period. There is no way around it. And this brings us to point number 3, which is to apply before you are ready. And that's well counterintuitive to many people, because they feel that after they have learned everything, after they have tested that, which both of these claims is a fallacy, as we have already discussed, but after they do all of that, then they reach a point where they are actually blessed to go to interviews. And that's a total and blatant lie. You shouldn't progress like that, because the thing is, going to interviews and presenting yourself well on them, and just leaving a good impression on your interviews is a skill. You should get that ingrained into your mind. It is a skill, and as with any skill, the only way to get better at it is to practice it. And just like when we're talking about the tutorial hell, you should go into creating stuff as soon as you can. Similarly, in order to be able to be good at interviewing, you should go to interviews. There is no way around it. You should read all those like top questions during interviews. I will also make some videos about that in the future, but for the time being, you can just Google stuff like the most popular questions for, I don't know, junior test automation engineer, whatever the role is that you were applying for, and go and read those and try and think of the answers and then read the solution and stuff like that, of course. But no amount of reading the questions is going to prepare you for the interviews to the same degree as going to the interviews itself. That's just the way it is. There's no better way to get better at a job than on the job itself. And the thing is, for the interviews, the job is the interview. So just go there, just start sending out your resume and just start going there. See what they expect of you, see how they are structured, see what it is like to actually participate in one, how many people are interviewing you, what are they interviewing you about. Is it the same for every company? Is it the same for a startup and a corporation? And spoiler alert, it's not. So go and just see the pattern. Just be more comfortable with it, because there is some degree of being uncomfortable at every interview that you are going to interact with, because that's just life. You are going there in order for other people to evaluate you. You are also evaluating the company, by the way. You shouldn't forget that. It's not one-sided. It's a dialogue, but still you are being evaluated there. And so in order to be able to do that well, you should practice. You should go there and you should cross-check your suppositions and your presumptions about how an interview is conducted with the real life. Yes, this may be a little hard on your ego, but there's no better way to learn. You will learn about your shortcomings. You will learn about what you don't know. You will learn about stuff that you don't know that is actually useful to land the job. That's the thing. If you learn in a vacuum, as we have already discussed, you can learn stuff that you will never, ever use. And if you go to a couple of interviews and you get some questions which you don't know the answer to, and you just stumble and your way around, first of all, you learn how to dribble past these questions better. And secondly, you actually learn what is expected of you. If there is a recurring pattern of stuff they are asking you about and you don't know it, then this is a good thing to go watch a tutorial about. This is a good thing to take a short course or crash course online on. That's the thing you should learn, not something you feel is important because it is listed as number 77 in your master playwright course. That's not the way you should go. That you should use an iterative process of going to the interviews and learning what you don't know, so that you then know what to target in order to actually learn the stuff that is important for you to go forward with your career. And like I said, acing an interview is a skill in and of itself. It is a muscle, and you need to flex that muscle for it to grow. And so you should understand that you could have all the technical knowledge in the world and still fall short in the interview, and nobody will care. And you can be a beginner and then ace an interview, and when people see you are a good person to have around, you are way ahead of the pack that is more technically competent than you. Because this is the thing, you are not partaking when you are going into an actual test automation engineer role. You are not partaking in test automation trivia, like pub quiz. You are not participating in a tournament of who knows better and who can recite this or that definition. It is a collaboration. Always. Teamwork is always about that. Working in real life projects is always about collaborative work, and you should learn that on the job. And it is a great deal of how you present yourself during an interview is also the interpersonal stuff. It is all those soft skills. It's not just you being able to tell them all about all those cool things you have learned about Playwright or Cypress the night before. So don't just cram for it like as if it was an exam. While going to these interviews, you will see how important that is, and you will see that I can't even tell you how many times I've seen people who are absolutely brilliant as far as the knowledge, but for the life of all that's holy, they could not present themselves on the interviews. And they tried to do as little of them as possible. They tried to pick the perfect company, which you can't do from just the offer listing, by the way. And very often you can't even evaluate that until you've worked there for some time. But still, and they just tried to do as little of the interviews, and they just kept banging their head on the wall and wondering why they have a headache. You shouldn't do it like that. You should try to flex that muscle and be better and better, because being good at technicalities is just one thing. Being good at the right technicalities is another thing, and you need interviews for that, because you need to know what they actually expect of you. And getting better at the soft skills is another thing, which the interviews will be a great help of for you. That's just the way it is. So just spend your time applying and going to the interviews, even if at first glance it seems like you are not actually ticking all the boxes. Remember that the things they are listing, it is more like a list of wishes. It's not, even if they say it is a must, you should still try, because you will also get over your fear of being inadequate with all the job offers. It is all just one big game, and so what they are listing, like I said, is a list of things that they won't. Not really a list of things that they need necessarily in order to invite you to an interview. And if you fall short, you will learn way more falling short in an interview than you will by mastering yet another advanced concept that you will never use. Trust me on that. And you may start wondering, and I hinted at it sometime before, all right, so what's actually the things that I do need to know in order to start interviewing? And so the list is really not that long. And this is going to be controversial. I feel like some people will have different opinion, but I'm sorry, I'm just giving you the truth peel here. So first of all, you need to know the basics of programming. And there is a separate video on the channel about that where I list exactly what you need. So go give that a watch. It's called Don't Be a Good Programmer, if I remember correctly, because that's the truth. You shouldn't aim at being a great programmer just to get into test automation. There's a very limited scope of knowledge you need to have in order to break into the field. So you should focus on that rather than learning some advanced concepts and doing who knows what. You should just focus on the basic, like the operators, data types, the types of loops, conditionals, functions, stuff like that. I talk about that at length on that video, so I recommend you to go there and give that a watch. Secondly, you need to know the basics of a framework of your choice. And again, very often, knowing one framework will be enough to let you participate in interviews even for other frameworks. You are just a beginner. You are most likely applying for a junior role, and they know that having someone that understands the basics of one framework will let them translate that into another one way faster than someone who knows a little bit of something from every framework while actually not understanding any of them. So you should just learn the basics of a given framework. You should learn how you should use it to actually create a test case, and how you can use it, how it utilizes weights, for example, sleeps, how it is structured, what kind of libraries are there, how you can use them, how you can import some resources, how you can actually create your own keywords or functions or whatever is in that specific framework, how it interacts with elements, how and stuff like that. So there's no video about that yet on the channel. Maybe at the moment when you are watching it, there already is one. So I recommend you to go there and check out. But even if not, you should just go and check some quick start guide of a given framework, and then watch some crash course on it so that you understand the basics, and then to get your hands dirty with practicing it, because this is the important part. Not whether you watch a 9-hour or 12-hour or 15-hour course. That's not the important part. The important part is then to try and exercise that and to try and use it for something tangible for your personal project. And thirdly is the testing knowledge. Some of it you will already have if you are going from being a QA specialist. Some of it is test automation specific though. It's not that much about testing in general. It's more about test automation per se. And these are things that are like foundational for the topic. So for example, what is a page object model? There's a video on that on the channel, so you should go give that a watch. Should you automate everything? Should you just strive for 100% automation? And is everything a good fit for automation? These are questions that pop up very frequently on interviews. And there is also a video exactly on that, so you should give that a watch. What is a locator? How to create one? There is a crash course on XPath on the channel and a more theoretical video about the foundations of locators, which is very important. It's very important stuff as far as interviews are concerned, and your work too, but of course, but we are focusing on the interviews right now. So go watch that. What is a framework? How should a framework be structured? What goes into a framework and stuff like that? There's also a separate video on that. So as far as test automation knowledge, there is a good library of videos about the most important topics here on the channel. So I really recommend you go there and give them a watch. And after you learn all these three most foundational things, you should learn the basics of a version control system, because you are, once again, you are going to be collaborating with other people, and you need some kind of a version control so that it all merges together nicely and works properly in an organization. And you will come across version control very soon. And if you don't, that's not a good indicator for the life cycle of that project. But still, you should learn that. So just go and watch some Git crash course. Just Google Git or GitHub or GitLab or anything, and just watch some crash course or do some interactive exercises on how to actually create a repo, clone a repo, how to update it and then push your changes, what's the difference between a commit and a push. Just learn the basics of version control. You don't need to get too deep into that. So again, don't use the possibility of procrastinating on learning just one more thing about version control to stall your progress. You shouldn't do that. And after you learn all these things, you are ready to apply. And I know that many people will be like, oh my God, absolutely, you don't know enough. There's this thing you don't know, and you should learn this, and you should... Yes, you will never know enough. But once you know enough to get the ball rolling, you should get the ball rolling. That's what will make you a good test automation engineer in the long run. Not being on the sidelines and learning one more thing and waiting until the wise heads on the internet tell you that you are ready. After you learn all of these things that I have already told you, you are already ready and you are already way ahead of the pack. And when you add some good soft skills and knowing how an interview is conducted, what you can expect so that it doesn't catch you off guard, then you are way ahead of the pack. And so that's why you should focus on that. You shouldn't focus on the stuff you don't know that may come your way during an interview. You will learn what you don't know and you will add it to your tool belt afterwards. But you shouldn't just start with what you don't know yet. Yeah, you don't know some stuff. And what I have listed is by no stretch of imagination enough to be a good test automation engineer or an expert, but you are not posing to be an expert yet. You just want to get your feet wet and to get into the field. So don't wait until you have the knowledge of an expert learning in a vacuum, because that's the road to nowhere. And you may feel, or after you learn all of this, you may feel some impostor syndrome kicking in. You may feel that, oh, what if they catch me? What if I get caught? Or what if I am not enough when I'm on the job already? First of all, nobody will catch you because you are not committing fraud right now. You are not telling them that you are an expert and that you are applying for a senior position. You can't cheat your way into a senior position, by the way. So don't worry. You are telling them that you are a beginner and they know you are. So they expect beginner stuff of you. And so don't set the bar too high in your mind before going to the actual interviews. That's the thing. You may have really dark scenarios in your head about what an interview is like and what the knowledge of an average participant in such an interview is actually. But in the real life, the candidates aren't always the most knowledgeable people on the planet. And so you should Just learn to be as good as you can and then start taking the interviews. And you will not be enough for the job. Of course, you've never done that before, but you will learn to be better after you go into the field and after you land the job. You should learn on the job, not before the job, because the stuff that is actually crucial to you functioning properly in the job, you can't learn beforehand. We have already talked about that. You can't learn it before. So it's not like you are cheating because you are learning that on the job. You are learning that on the job because that's where the battlefield is. That's where you will learn the stuff. To every sensible employer, an employee that knows the basics and can adapt to new stuff and grasp that stuff quickly is way more valuable than someone who memorized everything and can recite it like in the middle of the night, but at the same time can't adapt. So a good employer will give you space to learn on the job because they know this is the most efficient way and this is the only way that is tailor-made for the project. You can't learn the beforehand. Beforehand, you can learn the basics that will allow you to later quickly adapt and learn new stuff. But you learn that as it comes your way. You are not running in circles and wondering if that's enough, maybe there's one more course. Don't do that beforehand. You will know exactly what you don't know after you start working with the things. The sooner you'll be on the job, the sooner you will start leveling up very, very quickly. So stop wasting time, learn the basics of programming, do some side project, learn the basics of a framework, do some side project, learn the most important theory stuff about testing as a whole and test automation, to which I think our channel will be of great help. So I really invite you to browse the other videos and give them a watch. And after you do all of that, start applying to be better at the interview process. And then afterwards, you are going to land a job when you will actually start becoming a better test automation engineer. As Robert Frost once put it, the only way out is through. So I really wish you the best of luck. I hope this has been helpful. As always, I recommend you to browse the other videos. I hope that they will provide good value to you, and I always invite you to share your comments, thoughts, and maybe ideas for things that you would want to hear more about in the comments, to visit our social media. And as always, thank you very much for watching and keep on rocking.